Hi.
Hello there.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, 78 years old. A couple of years ago, I had open heart surgery to replace the aortic valve. The last 20 years, I've been baking. Before that, I was a teacher for 35 years and taught science, so I believe in science. And for that reason, I think I'm a pretty good patient in that most of the time I do exactly what the doctors tell me to do. And they told me in my exit interview, I guess it would be all called, or just the exit procedure from the hospital, that one of the things that would be a very good idea would be cardiac rehab. I had some experience with cardiac rehab earlier because my wife and I, went there as an exercise program because they have it open so that people can just sign up and go as an exercise, as a preventative thing. So I knew about the Stoughton Hospital cardiac rehab, went there for, as I said, exercise, and then it was time for me to do some rehab after the surgery, and they did a marvelous job. I was particularly impressed with how attentive they were to not just me, but all the patients, and how they monitored us very carefully to make sure that although we were supposed to push ourselves a little bit with cardiac rehab, we weren't pushing too much. So my experience was very, very good with cardiac rehab.
And you said that they told you that they first made the referral.
Yes.
First time you remember was when you were leaving the hospital. Do you remember them mentioning it in the preparation for the surgery?
I think they mentioned, but didn't make any detail about it. After surgery, I would need to do some rehab. And they were very specific about it when I was doing the exit, the discharge procedure. They gave me the papers and told me that I couldn't do the cardiac rehab immediately, but in a while I would be able to do that. I forget what the time span was that I had to do a certain amount of healing before I could start doing rehab. But I'm thinking it was a couple of weeks before I started rehab after I got out of the hospital.
Okay. And I know that you were sort of working on stuff right away when you got out of the hospital. Yeah. You had certain exercises and things that they had you do.
Yes.
By the time it got to the point that you were to go to cardiac rehab, did you still feel like that was important and helpful?
Yes. And I understood that although I was doing the exercises they told me and the procedures they were telling me to help, very careful how I got up, but there were various different things they were telling me to do with some exercises and getting up and standing and all that kind of stuff. But I also recognized that the actual rehab for the rest of my body was going to need more than what I could do on my own. So the cardiac rehab involved various different machines that they monitored me on. Some were, simple rowing machine, not rowing, bicycle, standing, stationary bicycle things, and a treadmill. But they also had me do some upper body motion stuff without any resistance. There's a machine where you basically crank a crank, and that started off with no resistance. It was really just get all those muscles moving. Mm-hmm. And then as it progressed, they increased the tension on the machine. They had me do some weight work, very lightweight, but a little bit of work with weights, etc. So it was very well thought out. It was very progressive in that you always started easy and then progressed up to higher weights and higher resistance. And I thought it was very, very well done. The most important part that I was impressed with was that as soon as you got there, before you do anything, you were hooked up to a monitor, and they had remote sensors on you, put on your body, and all the while you were doing the exercises, there were several of the attendants, but there was always somebody watching the monitors for all the people in the room, and could see if anybody was having any difficulty. I never saw anybody have any difficulty, but I know they were there ready to intervene if there was a problem with the cardiac rehab being too much for somebody, or if they were doing it wrong, or just too much exercise than their body was ready for.
So that helped you feel really reassured.
Oh yeah, I knew
there.
that this was a good place for me to be doing it. I mean, I could have done all of those things at a different kind of facility, but every other facility I've been to, there are people around, but you're pretty much on your own.
Right.
At cardiac rehab, you're never on your own. They're watching you, they're monitoring, and they know they've got people who need to be monitored.
Right.
That they are, the position they're in after surgery or in their healing process means they need to be monitored, and they do a marvelous job of following through on it.
And was the cost for this, was that covered by your insurance?
It was all
Did
covered.
you pay?
I assume it was covered by my insurance because I didn't pay for any of it.
Okay.
So either there's a big bill sitting out there or it was covered, and I'm quite sure it was covered.
Okay. And so I think you already spoke to this a little bit, but what was it that kept you going? Like what, after you'd been for a while and you were feeling a little more, steady on your feet, like you've gotten some back, what kept you engaged and wanting to go back?
Well, part of it is that I knew that the reason I was feeling better was that I was following a particular procedure. And maybe I could have followed that procedure on my own, but probably not. Certainly not as confidently as I was with those people watching me. So I was very pleased to be able to go, and it was convenient. It's easy. I mean, I live in Stoughton. It's in Stoughton, literally 8 blocks away from my house. So it was no problem. But I saw in the class that there were people who were doing a fair amount of traveling to get to the cardiac rehab, and they were coming regularly too. That was also one of the nice things about it, because you were in a room with other people who were in the same boat as you were. Mm-hmm. They were doing the same thing for the same reasons that you were. And it was not a great friendship group, but it was a little bit of camaraderie, which was good.
Yeah. And so it sounds like transportation and getting there certainly wasn't a barrier.
No.
Did you experience any other barriers or anything else getting in
the way?
No
barriers at all. There was nothing getting, well, what did get in the way was COVID, because before the normal routine was over, they had to shut things down. But other than that, nothing got in the way. They were very good. And they were very good about giving us instruction of what we should and shouldn't do on our own when it was necessary to close the facility down because of COVID.
Okay. Yeah. And what would you say to someone who has been referred to go to cardiac rehab and they're just not sure about it? They're, it's going to be a hassle for them to get there, or the time. What would you say?
Why not? I mean, you've gone through probably surgery. You've probably been in a situation you feel really bad after surgery for a little bit. You're feeling better. You're probably feeling better because of what they've done to you and with you. Mm-hmm. Why not continue doing what they're doing for you with them to make sure that you don't mess up, you don't overdo it, you don't put yourself in a worse situation than you needed to be in? It's just common sense. I mean, it's what smart people do.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Glad to.